Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cosmic Intelligence Agency's Leo eclipse at 18 degrees and 41 minutes, I think it is. The eclipse will be happening from this time in about 10 hours. So we're a prelude to what's going on with the last series of eclipses, as many of you know. The third eclipse in a series, and it's a solar eclipse in Leo. So my name's Agent 12, Julija, and I have with me the fabulous agents from around the globe, which I always love to introduce you all and show how international we all are. And I'll start with Christina, because you're up the top here with me. Christina Caudill, Agent 128, all the way in Florida. Thanks for being here and helping me organise this. Because I know that some of you would know we've already done quite a few webinars over the last few weeks. So thanks, Christina, for getting another one organised. That's all it really takes is to...
Well, we had to wrap up the eclipse season, right? We couldn't just leave it hanging.
Yeah, I was a bit busy, but I thought, okay, we can do it. And yes, wrapping up eclipse season is what today is all about. So thanks for that, Christina. Thanks for being here. And next, I'd like to welcome Rick Levine, Agent Merlin, we call him, all the way in Seattle. I think you're in Seattle. You could be anywhere with that background.
Yeah, but it's not all the way in Seattle. It's right here.
It's right here in Seattle. Yeah, exactly. So thanks for, I know your precious time as a very busy astrologer. So we're really happy to have you here today. Thanks, Rick.
It's lovely to be here, but it's the illusion of being busy.
Okay.
I work hard at that illusion.
That's very good agent work, very good. And then we have all the way in New York, Rebecca Crane, a new agent. I don't know, we all kind of met in Chicago, and of course we kind of connect to the people that we respond to the best. So thanks for being here, Rebecca.
Thanks. It is so great to be here. Quick correction, Rebecca Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say?
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh,
Rebecca Gordon. That's totally. I know there's a lot of
Rebeccas. Yeah,
I know.
Right.
We're everywhere. I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Your name's right in the corner. I'm sorry, Rebecca Gordon. We will make something of that.
It's okay. Well, I can't wait to dive into this with you all. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, cool. So thanks for everyone who's online as well on the webinar platform and register. And my part of this segment is going to talk about the difference between Saros cycles and Metonic cycles, which most eclipses are part of. They're all part of a Saros family. They're not necessarily part of a Metonic cycle, because you'll find out why. So 18 degrees of Leo is somewhere that's important for, well, wherever Leo is in our charts, and to some, as we've gathered here, you know, it's in my 9th house, it's on Rebecca's ascendant. There's a lot of things happening for everyone, and also relating back to the last time this eclipse happened at 18 Leo in 1999. And there's been a lot of discussions about that online, and you know, what people got into back then, and it's really quite interesting. And that would be true with every eclipse for different people. So I just want to go through a few things that are happening at the CIA to join us for our next retreat in Australia. If you're thinking of coming to Australia, if you're up near the northern New South Wales area or southern Queensland, come and join us for an amazing event, 4-day event in a beautiful tropical jungle during the Venus retrograde in Scorpio. So it's a deep dive into a lot of light work with astrology with our astrologer in France, Laura Trent, who's actually done a lot of work with, the Tibetan Buddhist sort of working with light and how that kind of moves through our body. So that's going to be fantastic. And there's also a day event that comes with that. If you can't make it to the whole 4 days, come and join us for a day on the Sunday. So anyone that's close by, have a look at the program. It's on our front page. For anyone in Melbourne, we have a horary day coming up. So horary astrology is a really great way to learn a lot of really important parts of astrology, especially how the moon works and its importance in sort of connecting things in the chart. So anyone that has gone to, you know, discover more in horary astrology would know that. just a bit about our membership. What we do here for free for the CIA is all about managing just getting agents together for this kind of thing because of the time frames. But we do a lot more on our membership, agentship, as we say, where we share a lot more information with specialist webinars once a month, and also month ahead webinars where we rotate agents with their specialities, their expertise, to actually teach you a lot more, or actually learn a lot more from each other. So you can join by a yearly membership or a monthly membership, and of course that keeps the cogs turning here at the CIA to allow us to do a lot more. And it is US dollars, someone's just asking there. But also our prices have been the same for nearly 3 years, so they're going up at the end of August. So do make the most of that if you are someone that wants to learn a lot more astrology, or just actually keep up with the ideas and thoughts of what the astrologers are up to behind the scenes.
And you're accepting Bitcoin now, right?
We do accept Bitcoin. We've had a few bit payments, and yeah, that could make it somewhat easier for some of you as well. But anyway, just know that there are a lot of incentives to join that. There's much more info on the website. For instance, yesterday we had a great member webinar with Kelly Hunter, and we talked about the void of course moon, and something that comes up just after this eclipse, after 19 degrees of Leo and in conjunct to Pluto that I think Rick will be talking about. Although void of course moons aren't really put into the picture with an inconjunct, they're very much more about the Ptolemaic aspects, the main aspects that we use, but it will be void of course. Okay, of course. So anyway, if you want to find out more about what the void of course moon is and how to work it, all our videos are then accessible through a login out on our website. Coming up later are all these people that you see on the screen. At the end of August, Kira Sutherland on the Houses of Health. So there's a heap of variety, and you've got access to all our archives as well. And for anyone that wants to be an agent of the CIA, we still encourage you to join the membership, and then we work with you to work out what you can do for the agency. And if you become a regular agent that's doing work like Christina or that type of thing, you don't have to resubscribe with that membership. So it's kind of a once-off. Anyway, so that's just a bit of a, promo for the CIA. We're going to get that done first. So here are the times for the eclipse that is upon us, so to speak. And you can, of course, check, because this eclipse is actually what we call, it's over the northern poles. It's not visible hardly at all because it's a tiny, tiny partial eclipse that is actually at the beginning of a cycle. Okay, so and I'll talk about that in a sec. So it's only visible in northern Scandinavia. I've got some maps here to show you in a second. And the astrology chart of this, I think Rick is going to sort of talk about that. So again, we've got, quite an intensive time happening at the moment with Mercury retrograde very close to the eclipse, a T-square, Venus, Chiron, and Saturn. And we have in our previous webinars talked about Mars retrograde on the South Node as a very significant time of this particular eclipse series, because Mars has been retrograde throughout this time and hovering at the South Node. And then last week we did a webinar on Black Moon Lilith in Aquarius. So if you want to, we're not going to concentrate on these things this time round. We're going to sort of move on to what's showing up in this one more so. All those videos are on our page and so on, and you can watch them there. So this is the eclipse, and where it's in a sense visible over the northern part of Scandinavia. It's hard to sort of see in this map, and it stretches out over the top of Russia and into China, and then over Greenland. So again, it's a tiny partial eclipse that's not really visible, but as we know, eclipses still affect us all somehow as a global kind of connection. Eclipses kind of bind us all together. This eclipse, many of you would have heard, many of you, this would be quite new to, but the Saros, every eclipse belongs to a Saros series, and the Saros series is what we call north or south, depending if the cycles or the family that this eclipse belongs to started in the northern pole or the southern pole, and this one started in the northern pole in June 1928. So it's actually relatively new to the whole scheme of what this eclipse series is about, because it runs till 2090. So eclipse cycles have about 1,000-year, or Saros cycles have 1,000-year time frame. So yeah, they begin at the north or south pole. This one started at the north pole. As you can see, it's only the 5th one in the series. So you know, we can think of it as a, you know, pretty modern eclipse. The difference between Saros family cycles is that they happen every 8 years and 11 days. So they do not, the difference between Saros cycles and Metonic, which I'll explain in a sec, is that every 18 years, this particular series repeats 155 and 11 days forward, so that it's not the same degree of the zodiac. So therefore they're kind of harder to track, but when you know them, you look up the family and you know it was 18 years ago and 11 days. So you can have a look at those dates. So therefore the families are always moving forward in the zodiac and moving down or up along the, you know, along the globe. Okay, so eclipses are partial when they begin or when they're ending in their whole cycle of series, and they're total near the middle of the globe as well. Okay, so just, you know, if you hear about a total eclipse, you know that it's kind of in the middle of its cycle, or its Saros cycle. The fascinating thing about the Saros cycles is they move around the planet like in 120 degrees around the globe, so that every 54 years they come back to the same area of the globe, a little bit up or down from where they were, but therefore, you know, astrologers will say that those years of 54 are actually very significant for somebody. And the difference between a Metonic cycle is that this eclipse at 18 degrees of Leo happened in 1999 on the 11th of August as well. And therefore, the difference between Metonic cycles is that they actually only come into fruition for about 5 cycles, and then they peter out, and that doesn't happen on that degree of the zodiac again, you know, until another series kind of comes in there. And that's called the Metonic cycle. So pretty much astrologers, and we'll find out from the rest if they follow both of these or perhaps see which one is most important. But most astrologers would say, you know, if you're studying, you want to find out what Saros cycle you were born into as a pre-eclipse cycle, solar and lunar. And actually one of our agents is going to be teaching that in January for the membership. So another great incentive to find out more. So this is the eclipse that started in 1928, June 17th, and it was, you know, teeny tiny at the top of the northern pole. And this is what we call the chart for that. Now, many of us would have heard Bernadette Brady gives an eclipse family like a story or a theme for the whole series of eclipses based on the chart that actually happened in, you know, the first eclipse. So I actually didn't research what she said about that. I might have a look at it while the others are speaking, because I've got the book here, The Eagle and the Lark, that talks about all these series of eclipses and what they mean. But that's the chart for it. So perhaps you can glean some kind of meaning there. A lot of Gemini on the North Node. And as you can see, it's not in Leo. It's actually moved in these 5 progressions, 11 degrees every time it comes back every 18 years and 11 days through the zodiac. And this is what it looks like through the world map as we, you know, go across the sky there and to the bottom one. So this is a 6th eclipse in the series, okay? And these are the dates. So you can see that they're 18 years apart and 11 days, or mostly 11 days. And then this one that we have, the one that started in 1928 will have its return to the same place on the planet, as you can see, sort of going down over North America eventually as well, by 2036 for the next return of this series. And this image is not from this series, but you can see that every time they go 120 degrees around the planet, they're going to be happening in the same place and moving down or up, depending if they're a north or southern eclipse, coming from that pole. So anyway, there's a lot to learn about eclipses, and they're truly fascinating. And the more you're in tune with these and what they mean for your, year you were born and all that type of thing is a really great thing to know. And then this Saros cycle, again, beginning at 26 Gemini, you can see it sort of going through, it goes through Cancer, and now it's in Leo, okay? But then if we look at the Metonic cycle, this again, repeating at 18 degrees of Leo, it started in 1942 as a tiny, tiny little partial eclipse, has kind of peaked in that time. And this is the last one. There will be no other one at 18 Leo for, I don't know, until that comes back into that zone of the zodiac. So again, really important to think about. So for some of us, it's a new moon solar eclipse, of course. It's partial, it's beginning in its cycle up the top of the poles. So it's a beginning and an ending, and then an ending of a Metonic cycle. So it's an interesting, very potent and powerful ending beginning eclipse to me. So have a look where that resonates for you in your chart and so on. Just a quick look at the astro map, as we call the astrocartography map for the time of the eclipse. For those of you that wanting to learn more, of course, you can see in the top above Scandinavia there that you can't really see, but I'm just going, I haven't got my pointer on, but the sun and the moon are up there. And of course, that's the only place that is going to be visible. And where it's nighttime, of course, solar eclipses aren't visible. But if we zoom up a bit, we can see that, I can show you there. That's what I mean. So visible on the northern Scandinavia. And then it's actually setting in a place in Indonesia and very close to Lombok. The sun, you can see there, Mercury close by. The moon's not showing up there because it's actually conjunct the sun, so it's behind in that graphic. And that's, of course, where the earthquakes have been really sort of being targeted over the last week. So not always do the astro lines show up so clearly where there's going to be, let's say, activity on the planet. Earthquakes are very much, hone into eclipse seasons as well, or they're more potent at that time, and have been sort of documented for quite a long time with astrologers around the world. So you can see that line going through Indonesia there, and on an astrology chart, that's what it looks like in Lombok. The eclipse is actually right on the descendant, with Jupiter squaring right at the midheaven. So there's a lot of pull, as we'd say, in that place. And that's what mundane astrologers kind of look out for, let's say. So look, that's it from me, because we're going to talk more about all of this. So I just wanted to introduce the cycles in that sense, and what the difference between Metonic and Saros are. And of course, you can learn a lot more with us through the agency as we go. So keep an eye on that. And there's some websites that will, if you want to do research into your eclipse cycles, go to these websites to find the eclipses of your year, and start exploring. All right. There you go. I hope that's been a good introduction. So anyone, Rick, you were going to say something, but your mute, what do you call it? Your microphone's off.
I don't have anything to say until it's my turn. I just opened my mouth to you.
Okay. All right. Well, actually, it is your turn. So how about over to you? Because you're going to talk about the actual chart of the eclipse today and what's going on in the zeitgeist to do with that right now. Thanks, Rick.
All right, here we go. Do I have full screen now?
You will share screen.
Or do I? No, I don't want to share my screen yet. I just want to know whether everyone can hear me and we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to start off a little bit talking about how an eclipse occurs in a flow of events always. You talked a little bit about the larger eclipse cycles, and I want to hold on to the thought that this particular Saros cycle, the initial eclipse, had a charged Gemini Mercury energy. That in that chart that you showed, Julia, that there was I think three planets and Venus also all in Gemini, and that was kind of the emphasis. And I want to hold on to that thought because of Mercury right now, and I'll get to that in just a moment. When I look at an eclipse chart, although the cycles, the larger eclipse cycles, certainly do have importance, I'm particularly interested in every eclipse is either a new moon or a full moon, and therefore I want to start off and ask the question, what is this new moon? What is it about? How does it fit into the general energy of what's going on up there? And what are the other aspects that are prevalent right now? Because that really is where the eclipse is seated cosmically in our individual lives. Before I jump into the chart, I want to just for a moment note that to me, the significant thing about this eclipse is that we have 5 out of 7 planets retrograde. Matter of fact, the visible planets are all retrograde except for Venus and Jupiter. And of course, Jupiter just has come out of a retrograde and Venus is heading into a retrograde. So we're really in a retrograde swirl. And retrogrades, I think, are one of the great misunderstood things in astrology. And I want to spend a moment talking about them because I don't think we can understand the nature of this eclipse unless we understand the nature of retrogrades. And as such, I would like to start off with a thought poem that I wrote a number of years ago entitled Retrograde, and then I want to move from there because that just seats us to where we are. And it goes like this. Heavenly forms, gods and spirits, abstract and transparent metaforms. There, the chief cook, commander supreme, looks down from multi-dimensions into the earth plane. He, she stirs the slowly thickening soup. Cosmic spoon in one hand, magic wand in the other. Round and round, stirring, stirring, again and again and again, always the same way round. Concrete forms here on earth, earthbound and solid. Here, a spectator, solitary in thought, looks up from 3 dimensions into the multidimensional universe. She, he watches the spinning wonders, astrolabe in one hand, quill pen in the other. Round and round go the planets, consistent and perfect in their orbs, always the same way round on their journey encircling the sun. But no, what? What in heaven's name is this? Obvious cosmic imperfection, systems within systems distort our perspectives, orbital space and time relativities step on logic as if to scrape the stickings from the bottom of the pot. Apparently arbitrarily, perceptually inarguable, the planets reverse direction, even if only from Earth's point of view. For a millennium, even longer, this was the ultimate unsolvable Rubik's Cube, the wandering of some stars, the movement of these planets, the meaning of retrograde motion. Think, Ptolemy, how can this be? Think, Galileo, how can you learn more? Think, Kepler, can you solve this mystery? Think, Newton, what strange forces are at work here? Think, Einstein, can you put the cube together? In abstract metaphysical realms, the unimaginable, unknowable chief cook licks the spoon, gives a few quick stirs against the normal motion. Whirlpools form within whirlpools. Vortexes of energy stir up past visions and perturb the divine regularity and cloud the forward motion of time. Earthbound, we watch the cosmic dance, trying to comprehend what we, in our cellular wisdom, already know. So here's the problem. Planets appear to move backwards, and we astrologers ascribe meaning to those planets. And the reason I'm leaning on retrogrades right now is the fact that the Saros cycle had a Gemini emphasis. Also, the fact that Mercury is particularly importantly aspected now. We'll get back to that in a moment. But the fact that Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Chiron, and Pluto are all retrograde. And so we got this swirl that we normally think of in astrology as problematic. The traditional way we look at retrogrades is they move backward. They're not good. They're difficult. They create mess ups. Mercury retrograde, as we started, we had a couple of technical issues today. Most people I know are facing a variety of technical issues. And the fact of the matter is that Mercury retrograde certainly has a bad rap, maybe almost as bad as eclipses. And it's these two things that I really want to talk to because we need to look at what happens when a planet goes retrograde. And it's very simple. A planet is retrograde when it's closer to Earth in its cycle than it is at any other point in time. That's it. That is the mechanics of it. When Mercury or Venus come between the Earth and the Sun, they're closer to Earth, they appear to go backwards. When the Earth approaches on the same side of the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, the planet appears to go backwards, just like two trains on a track. When you're in a subway or a train and you're passing a train next to you and you look out the window, it looks like it's going backwards. It's not really going backwards. It's just that we lose perspective. And here's the thing to understand, that when a planet is closer to Earth in its normal cycle, it's like a radio station that's louder. And therefore, the problem we have with retrograde planets is integrating the intensity or the loudness. And this comes from a judgment based upon our ancestors who lived in a flat, one-dimensional world, that if a Mercury was really loud, there was nowhere to go with it. You couldn't increase your learning. You couldn't get more excited about it. Instead, you had to shut it down, which meant that you projected it, which means it came back at you from the outside, and it was problematic. So it's really important to understand that all these retrogrades right now are only problematic if we can't integrate them. And integrating them is difficult, and yet that's what our job is, that's what our chore is right now. So when I look at an eclipse chart, and let me just bring up this eclipse chart now and shift to the screen view. Where am I? Somewhere here I have the, all right, for some reason I can't find my,
on the top of the screen, Rick?
Okay, here we go. It's share screen. That we're there, and we're sharing the desktop. And now I should be able to do that, and you should be able to see.
Yep, all good.
A screen, and in fact, you may get a double image here, but that's okay. Just bear with us. All right. So what I want to look at here is I want to look at the sun and the moon at 18 degrees and 41 minutes of Leo, and how closely they are to quincunxing Pluto at 19 degrees of Capricorn. And I would take exception, Julia, with you referred to this as an inconjunct, and because I'm a bit of a stickler with language, I want to make it clear that an inconjunct was a Ptolemaic concept that meant two planets were not in aspect with one another, and the Ptolemaic inconjunct included quincunxes and semisextiles. So when we refer to a quincunx as an inconjunct, we're actually saying an inconjunct means a semisextile or a quincunx, and I think more normally we would be more accurate to call it a quincunx. And quincunx is Latin for quinc is 5, and unx is 12, and a quincunx is in fact 5/12 of a circle. And the fact of the matter is that the only tight aspect between this eclipse and the other planets is the quincunx between the eclipse and Pluto. And I think this largely tells the story of how we fit into the larger scheme of things where we are now. We'll come back to Mercury in a few minutes. The thing is that quincunxes are irritable. They're annoying. Why? Because you can't bring them into focus and you can't make them go away. I think of a quincunx as the mosquito in the tent when you're camping. You know, you turn off your flashlight, your lanterns, you crawl into the sleeping bag, it's cold, and you know, and just as you're dozing off, all of a sudden you hear this. And you know what's worse than hearing that buzz of mosquito when you're falling asleep in a tent? The only thing that's worse than hearing it is hearing it stop. Because all of a sudden we know it's going to land on us, and we kind of freak out, and we brush off all of our exposed parts and everything because we're afraid that we're going to get bit by a mosquito. And we go through this a couple of times and we can't make the mosquito go away. And finally we sit up, we climb out of our sleeping bag, we fire up the lantern or turn on the flashlight, and we go, all right, come on, it's either you or me. And then we sit there like an idiot for 4 or 5 minutes and there's no mosquito. We get back into our sleeping bag, and just as we're falling asleep, we hear it buzz again. This is a quincunx. You can't get rid of it and you can't resolve it. Squares at least can be resolved. They can be worked on. They manifest something into creativity. So what's going on here? We have this new moon, an eclipsed sun, but we have this new moon in Leo with Mercury close to the Earth. Mercury retrograding over halfway through its retrograde cycle, also in Leo. This is about wanting to show things the way they are. This is about wanting to call things for what they are, to speak the truth from the heart. And yet it's almost like with this quincunx to Pluto and with Mercury retrograde in Leo, it's almost like there's so much truth that can be spoken. It's almost like there's too much to say, that if we speak it, we'll get into trouble. And in fact, at least in the United States, with all the political stuff that's going on, this quincunx between this eclipse and Pluto is very much about Pluto being halfway through its cycle of moving through Capricorn, and it deconstructing the structures, whether it's the economic banking structures, the government structures, the structures of our culture, our society itself. And of course, we know that ever since Saturn entered Capricorn, Saturn only has one job right now, and that is to fulfill its destiny by meeting up with Pluto. It's got an appointment with Darth Pluto in January of 2020. And that's really, to me, this eclipse is about the impossibility of where we are in this larger cycle, knowing that we are on about a 1.5 year run until Saturn and Pluto meet up. And then that's when all of this karma that we've built up is going to be, if not resolved, at least temporarily, it'll come to the forefront. Now, the other piece that we have going here about Mercury being very significant, I think, so the most important thing is the aspects that the eclipse makes. And again, the closest aspect that the eclipse makes is that quincunx to Pluto. However, Mercury being in the same sign as the eclipse and retrograde, Mercury right now is making a square to Jupiter. And this square is very close. In fact, it was exact just a few hours prior to the eclipse. I think I have that over here. I'm going to take a quick glance at it, but I'm sure that it was, yeah, it was exact It's exact about 3 hours prior to the eclipse. So it is incredibly close. And that Mercury retrograde in Leo squaring Jupiter in Scorpio, again, it's interesting because we moderners relate Pluto to Scorpio, and this Mercury retrograde squaring Jupiter is, again, it's wanting to bring everything out in the open. It's wanting to expose things and show things for what they are, and yet it's squared to Jupiter is saying, wait, that's too much, too fast, too TMI, too much information. And I think that becomes the other message that sits behind this particular eclipse. There's one other piece here that I think is incredibly important about two other things about Mercury. One of them is that this Mercury also forms a quincunx, the second quincunx. The first is the eclipse to Pluto, and the other quincunx is Mercury forms a quincunx to Neptune. And this, again, is the difficulty that we have of speaking the truth, of saying things the way they are, of coming from the heart center and actually getting things out into the open. One last thing about this Mercury, and I need to change views here, and I'm going to, for a second, this screen is going to look like it's garbaged up with a lot of things, so just bear with me here 1 second. We're going to turn the aspect lines on, and now we're going to get rid of everything except for the Sceptiles, which is, we'll just do here by seventh harmonic. And what this is showing, and I know many astrologers don't use Sceptiles, those of you who know my work probably know that I would no sooner do a client chart without quintiles and septiles than I would without Mars or squares. They are that significant and that important. I've been watching them for nearly 40, actually for over 40 years. So we've been in a bit of a septile pressure cooker this month, partly because Uranus, which is slow moving enough, Uranus has been in this slow moving biquintile with Pluto, and into this Mercury backs into that scene, creating, septiles are based upon a 7-pointed star. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7-pointed star. And they are complicated. They are otherworldly. Dame Rudyard called the septiles the aspect of fate. In fact, the first bombing of the World Trade Tower on the morning of September 11th, 2001 is one of the most heavily septile charts I've ever seen. You see strongly septile charts where something comes crashing through from the other side in an event. Nick Collerstrom called them aha, eureka experiences in the discovery in scientific breakthroughs. In individual charts, they're in charts of people who are otherworldly, alien, like David Bowie, Michael Jackson, not Walt Whitman, Washington Irving, the legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's stuff that is complicated and comes from other dimensions. And here we actually have a chart where we have 4 planets on 4 points of a 7-pointed star, which is incredibly significant because it denotes that this moment in time, this eclipse, aside from all the obvious things that all the astrologers are talking about, this eclipse is opening up portals to other dimensions, other times, other spaces, and it's almost like it's allowing leakage to come through and create more magic, more potency in this event that make events happen that are more fated or seem more fateful, but it's just because it's like chess pieces in a game of chess in other dimensions are being moved around, and all of a sudden, boom, they come crashing through. I think that pretty much does what I need to say on the front end. I'm happy to come back to this from another direction. Let me turn my screen.
Can I ask, maybe, did you want to talk about putting those pieces together with the yod, where the eclipse and Mercury is at the apex of the yod, with a little bit wide, but with Pluto and Neptune?
Well, okay,
Do you use yachts?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But the problem, not a problem, what you're talking about, Christine, I think is, and I'm leaving these purple lines of the Sceptiles. Actually, this is a biseptile, 2/7 of a circle. This is a biseptile, 2/7 of a circle. And this is a triseptile, 3/7 of a circle here. Now, the problem is that a triseptile is about 154 plus degrees, and a quincunx is 150. So at some point, a wide quincunx steps into septile land. And this is a topic I don't want to get into now. It's a little bit too complicated to explain in 5 or 10 minutes. Give me 20 minutes and I can make it clear. What you're talking about, though, is that Mercury at almost 15 degrees of Leo is making a quincunx to Neptune. I already mentioned that. And you're saying that it's part of a yod because it's making a wide quincunx to Pluto, and therefore that is a sextile. Yes, that's true, but it actually gets picked up more by the 7th harmonic than it does by the 12th harmonic, because a quincunx is 5/12, which is a 12th harmonic aspect. And although what you're saying is true, and yes, it even adds more potency to that retrograde Mercury, I would suggest that by looking at that only as a yod limits our perception, and then we fail to see the power of that 7-pointed star sitting behind that. But yes, you're absolutely right, and it does add another layer of strength to that Mercury. Remember that Mercury is retrograde, so it's pulling away from the quincunx to Pluto, which it's already at 4 degrees, and that already is wide. It's already stepping into triseptile land. But yes, there is a yod here. And just for those of you who might have been lost by how quickly some of this went by, we can do this way. Whenever you have two planets that are sextile one another, that's 60 degrees, and they are mutually quincunx is 150 degrees to another planet up here, that is called a yod, actually really named after the yud, which is the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's the finger of God. It's the pointer that the Hebrews used when reading the Torah, because they wouldn't touch their finger to the Torah. And it's basically the complexity of the planet on the apex, which in our chart here is actually Mercury. Coming back to this chart, Mercury is at the apex of the of the yod with Neptune and Pluto at the base. And so, yeah, Mercury is important no matter how you look at it. And I find it extra fascinating, Julia, that you mentioned that the first eclipse of this Saros cycle had such a Gemini influence. And here we are all over it again with this retrograde Mercury so close to the eclipse, and it being a real fulcrum point to what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Rick. That wizard hat you drew, the yod, it reminds me of your wizard hat.
Well, I'm hatless now.
Right.
And apparently hairless, but oh well.
Oh, that's what the hat's for, hey? Thanks for all that. We could listen to you for hours, and I'm sure everyone else here could as well.
But we're not
with
going
your
to.
teachings.
That was excellent.
Thank you. No, we can't do that. But hopefully we'll get you on next year, Rick, to do a special topic for us next year. I have to say the first lecture I ever went to of yours was in Brisbane, and it was on sceptiles and quintiles, and of course I fell in love with them after that.
two things before I sign. I'll be here, and obviously I'll interact as need be. But two things before I sign off from being front and center. One is that I would love to come to the CIA event, and I will almost be in your neighborhood, but I'll be on the last couple of days of leading a 10-day retreat in Bali. So I'll be nearby, but I won't be able to make it there. So maybe next time.
Oh my gosh. I saw that, but yes, at the same time. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's at the same time. And if you're interested in
Right.
looking on that, go to heavenandearthworkshops.com. There's information there. The other thing I want to mention for people who are listening is if you want more of some of my stuff, whatever that is, go to Patreon. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/Rick Levine. Patreon.com/Rick Levine. Since I quit writing dailies, that's where the bulk of my work is. I have weekly videos and all kinds of treats going up. Learn more about it there. All right, I'm done.
Thanks. Christina just added the link to the webinar, people, so that's awesome. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Julia.
If you can just stop share, and we'll hear more from you as we continue.
Done.
Ooh, thank you. Now Rebecca's gone. Where are you?
I scared off Rebecca.
So,
come back.
Rebecca, come back. So thanks, Rick. So over to you, Rebecca, now, as you're going to tie in a few more things. Again, there's so much depth into every eclipse, all of astrology anyway. So over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Oh, I loved that depth that you brought in. And so we went back to the OG eclipse in 1928, the beginning of the series. And I went back to that one as you were talking, Julia, just to kind of check in. And I realized on that date in 1928 is when Amelia Earhart, the first woman, flew across the Atlantic Ocean. Gemini, North Node,
wow.
solar eclipse, flying across the Atlantic Ocean. First woman. I mean, wow, what a signature. So I'm happy with that
cool.
sort of OG stamp here. We have good.
I didn't have time to research it, but that's great. Thanks, Rebecca.
Hey, Rebecca, I'll look it up, but I swear I just heard some news lately about Amelia Earhart. Like they discovered she didn't die in the crash; she survived or something. I literally heard that this week. I'll have to look it up.
I believe it because as I was just on all the websites, she was showing up everywhere, and I think something was quite recent. So that's certainly something. And you know how charts never die. So obviously, this Metonic cycle is bringing her back up, and all of that. So great. Yeah, it's June 18th, 1928. Right. So there's an article that came out in the Atlantic Journal, actually, sometime recently around that. So yeah, something to look into. Okay. So, yeah, and I just want to mention also something about a new Saros cycle. I mean, that's quite rare that we do bring a new Saros cycle begins on the planet, and this is a sort of new band of consciousness, a new theme that's showing up that started in 1928. I was following it through on the NASA website. I'm a total geek for the NASA website. I don't know about you all, but that's sort of like my jam late at night. I'll go there and look at the Saros cycles. So I was tracking this one as it was weaving through time, and there was a lot of like booms and busts. You know, I saw the .com boom and bust, and that was sort of like this theme of sort of, you know, the Roaring '20s, the Great Depression, these sort of extreme bubbles that were creating. I saw a lot of bubbles and busts as this one wove throughout time. Anyway, so my topic today for this, I decided to do something a little bit practical. After all, I am a Virgo, conjunct Saturn Sun here. So what I'm going to talk about is the concept of using eclipses in readings, but not only simply in the natal chart, but how important it is in the solar plus natal. So I'm assuming I'm talking to a lot of people here that are astrologers, beginning astrologers, intermediate, O levels. Is that right? You can say in the chat box your level of astrology. I just want to see kind of who I'm talking to here. So just let me know.
All levels.
All levels. Okay, excellent. So great. So I look at it this way. When eclipses to me are the number one most important technique in astrology, in a reading, in anything. If if there's one thing I could say to somebody for 2 minutes in an elevator, I would talk about the eclipses of the year, because that sets the foundation for everything. They set the foundation of the year. They show what's ending, what's dying, and what's being born. If there's nothing else, there's that, okay? And whether we like it or not, and often they are completely earth-shattering, and they destroy aspects of our life, and resurrect others. We have to look at the sun as, I think there is a poem even that Rick wrote one time, as speaking of the sun as the radio station that's blasting out, right? And then suddenly it's a certain signal that's playing out, and then suddenly the moon comes in front of the sun, and the station is turned off for a moment of time, and then it passes over, and yet that same station can no longer be found again. It's just not on the dial anymore. So after tomorrow, whatever rhythm you all have been dancing to, there is some song that is no longer playing anymore, and it will be yet upgraded. So there will be a new station, a new melody that you will be able to access, but no more dancing to that old tune, right? That's what this is about. So to me, it's part of, like, we can say progressions, perfections, all those things. Maybe that's the wash on the canvas, sitting down for a reading. We throw the wash on the canvas. Now I'm going to make 2 marks, like big, bold, black ink marks. Those would be the eclipses. That's the central theme. So really, I want to show you all. I'm going to share my screen in a bit. I'm going to use solar fire, and I'm really going to show you how I approach a reading in terms of integrating eclipses, and why I feel like it's the #1 important thing in any kind of year ahead outlook, sort of like, and also, of course, the prenatal too, if that's, or the postnatal, if it's very close, if that's relevant. I'm just going to check the chat box. Okay, yeah, dancing to a new song. Exactly. It's a new kind of music that we are all hearing post-eclipse. So, and this one, you know, it's a bit, I think we have to watch out for going too far, too polarizing in whatever we're doing. The square to Jupiter, this very exuberant degree of Leo square Jupiter, and all of the retrogrades. I think all the wildfires out west happening, we have to make sure we're not going too far too fast, that we create enough spaciousness and time to really pause and reflect during this series. Okay, so let's get busy. I'm going to show you my screen right now. Let me know if you all can see good old solar fire. Everybody can see solar fire here?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So what I have, I have client charts here. I just call them A, B, and K. And I'm just going to show you how I'm going to approach things. So I've been writing horoscope columns for the last 14 years. I write for Harper's Bazaar, a lot of other magazines as well. And before that, I was doing natal astrology. So what I realized is that horoscopes can be extremely accurate. Natal charts can be extremely accurate. And what's even better is if we throw them into a pot and turn up the heat and really tell a story that is the pure marriage of both. So that's what I would like you all who are listening today to try on your own, check it out. And we're just going to throw 2 ingredients and see what it creates when you mix them together. Cool, are we all on board with that? All right, so here we go. We're going to take, just going to go to the dual wheel. I'm going to take chart A and chart A. So there you see the natal chart here of this person who has a, Sagittarius sun. And then you see the solar chart here, which puts Sagittarius. So
I'm
for those of you,
not seeing a second sun. Are you?
Yeah, we're only seeing one chart. Or
we're only seeing the natal chart, the A.
Uh-oh, there we go.
There you go.
How's that?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay, good. Okay, so now you should see 2 charts here, right? And this is what I do in preparation for any reading, as it's almost like I'm writing the horoscopes as well as doing the chart. I look at both, and they're always both in my head. There's not one reading where I'm not constantly thinking about the layering of the solar and natal, especially with eclipses. So this is the rising Aquarius, and here's the solar chart. Solar chart just means putting the sun sign, you know, on the rising. I'll use my red thing to show you. Okay, so you all know this eclipse is at 18 degrees Leo, right? As the Sabians like to call the houseboat party. So let's check that out. So here in the natal chart, you see 18 degrees Leo is on the descendant line. 7th house, you know, you think traditionally that's about partnerships. That eclipse, it's really, if we go off that radio signal, this is opening a new quality of light in the realm of partnership, a new rhythm to dance to, a new way of doing partnership, a brand new song to sing in the realm of partnerships for this person. We could say, you know, just a very basic sort of interpretation, right? And then we go into the solar chart here, which we put 0 Sag here on the rising, and we look for 18 Leo, which is of course then in the 9th house, right? So the 9th house, we can speak of things like all of the long journeys, teaching online courses, education, reaching many people across the globe, all of these sorts of concepts, maybe someone from another country, overseas affiliations, all of that, right? So now we come back, and for this person's basic eclipse forecast, my point, it's not one or the other. It's not like, oh, this year is going to be about partnerships. It's not like this year is going to be about traveling and learning and speaking at all these conferences. No, we're going to throw them in a pot, turn up the heat and mix it and see what happens. So I would say something perhaps more like this. And just to give you an example, when there's two things layered, right, we're just basically looking at this is what kind of relationship is this person getting into? Well, either perhaps somebody from another country, a business partnership where there's a lot of travel. You know, it's always a combination, especially with these eclipses, if there's going to be a theme for the year, or really kind of combining these two. And I'm using sort of client charts at the moment because, you know, I've already sort of seen these themes developing in their lives as well. Do you all use, I'm just curious, Julia, Christina, Rick, do you all do this too when you're using eclipses and everything? Is this sort of like a common thing? I'm just wondering.
I don't really. I know where eclipses are. It's like you said, there's the black mark through the, you know, this is where the eclipse zone is, but not necessarily with the solar chart. No, I don't. But
Okay.
look, you know, it's a great idea. I mean, I use other things, let's say, but I think I might now.
Okay. I'm just wondering, you know how we all astrologers, we're in our own worlds and we create our own practices. So this is what I've been doing the last 14 years that I'm just sharing you.
Yeah, it's great.
A technique, you know.
I like the idea of using the solar chart, and of course I use solar charts when when I've written dailies, but I would normally just use the birth chart. But I like that idea because when you're using a solar chart, you're really just talking about aspects to the sun. You know, I mean that's basically what you're doing, and so you know a Leo eclipse is going to be in a 9th house aspect to a Sagittarius sun.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good.
Okay, cool. That's good. That's good to hear. Just wondering, you know, I never know how other astrologers work, so thanks for filling me in. Okay, great. So really, and what I found is, you know how what we do is we just eliminate like vagueness here, and I don't like anything to be really vague in a reading or anything, and it's better to bring a very specific metaphor into a focal point than be vague and just say, oh, a partnership. Because people can always understand metaphor. So we can be very specific here. All right. And of course, I do the same thing with transits. So let's just go there for a second. We can say, for example, Jupiter is obviously in Scorpio. This person's having, I guess, their Jupiter return in a month or so, right? And then, so Jupiter 9th house here in the solar chart, Jupiter is in the 12th house. So this person is having a 9th, 12th house Jupiter story. Again, throw the 9th and 12th Jupiter into a pot, turn up the heat, and think about what that's going to look like, okay? Well, I can tell you what this person is doing, just to give you an example of a 9th, 12th house Jupiter situation. She's really going quite public with a meditation app right now, you know, and has been really working on her practice and creating beautiful meditations that she's going to share in a very 9th house way in global platforms, you know. So the whole year has been in this sort of deep inner practice and very kind of expansion of those houses. So anything just to kind of have that overlay and multi-dimensional aspect of the solar universe as the geocentric happening concurrently seems to be important to me. So let's have a look at a new chart and see. Let's just try it out on a couple and see what happens there. Now I have a much younger person to show you next. Chart B. So let's do the dual wheels again here. And, you know, definitely try this at home and see what sort of stories come up for you when you combine them. Okay, so this person here, wait, can you all see the screen or do I need to do something?
No, that's good.
Yeah? Okay, hold on. Great, okay. So here we have an Aries, right? And I'm going to use a spotlight. Okay, so our, maybe this is out of the way. Okay, so first we look at this chart, we see a 10th house, the eclipse is at 18 Leo, which would be this person's 10th house, right? In the natal chart. And then we go to the solar and it's the 5th house. So if you want to type in, let's see how you all do with this. What are some ideas? Just 10-5, turn up the heat, what happens? Give me an idea.
Well, first of all, it's conjunct the North Node, so it's definitely got to be something destined going on for this person, right?
Absolutely.
That's their natal, right? Okay.
Yeah, right? It's conjunct the North House, so it's a...
Falls in love with her boss.
Does her affair with her boss.
Now we're talking, okay. Destiny, and it's fate. It's just pure destiny. You know, it's that star-crossed lovers feeling. Those nodes, you know, they get you every time, right? So on this 10-5, so I actually don't know what is happening with this person right now. I just thought it is a client's daughter who is in a rehabilitation center at the moment. So, and her daughter said it's okay. So we explored her chart. I got permissions, of course. And I saw her earlier this morning and we looked at both charts. There were some other key things showing up here that were very relevant too, as you know, Chiron's obviously going to be pretty near the sun later on as well. But so basically it's this person, as the 10th house rules fame, honors your public persona, really recreating who you are to the world. And there's a lot of creativity we're exploring. But what this, to your point, Christina, as well, she is actually very much aligning with a new career of becoming a sponsor right now, and just the interest in working in that path of working with children, young people, 5th house, 10th house, you know, the connection of teaching others, working with people, and following.
And the 10th house being and like rising into an authority figure in her own way, like as a right?
Yeah, I mean, she does have a long way to go, but that's sort of the direction. She's staying with the program, and if you stay with the program, you become a sponsor. And she just made that decision to commit to it for the next step. So, you know, for a young person, 10th house and in this stage would mean that that's the level of what we call career. And perhaps she will speak at, later on at high schools and things like that. Who knows, right? So, or it could be you fall in love with your boss, but I don't know if that's the case here. So I think, so this is what it is with this situation. And it's just one example of how that plays out. But certainly it's important in this person's chart. It also opposes Uranus and a very strong mark on the canvas. It's a change in direction, commitment to the soul path. I always feel that eclipses really expedite evolution. And the farther off, sometimes we stray far, just life happens from our soul potential. And there's this feeling of getting boomeranged back in, as if we can't avoid the soul intent sometimes. Eclipses seem to pull us back into the midline in a way. Or at least that's what I've experienced and seen. There is a sort of evolutionary intent involved, right? That there.
I'm just looking at that chart, Rebecca, just where Mars retrograde is on the Neptune, the last eclipse being there as well in the 4th house. Oh, this is the natal chart. And the first eclipse in this series being on her moon, or his moon. So anyway, there's a lot going on there.
So the first eclipse being on her moon, you said, Gemini. Oh, what a great point. Yeah. It was Cancer on her Cancer moon. Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on one second. Did I just... Wait, I'm looking at...
Oh, you've gone to the next chart. But anyway, in that last one.
Oh, I thought you meant the original eclipse of the series. Okay, hold on one second. Oh, right, the Cancer moon opposed Pluto you're talking about.
Yeah, and then the Mars retrograde and the South Node on Neptune, and the last eclipse in Aquarius there as well. And she's just became, a sponsor. So anyway. Well,
she's on the path to, just starting to commit to the whole, absolutely, right.
Great, bigger than her. Fantastic.
And it's been so trying for her. She's just, with that was the breaking point she had, that previous eclipse. And if we look at that with, that was on the moon there. And if we look at that with this method, you see there's two things that work again. It's the 4th house, right? Because that eclipse was at what degree of Cancer again?
I think it was 28.
It was 19.
28, right.
No, it was 19.
19.
Oh, was it 19? Oh, sorry, it's a bit further.
Okay. You've got, 19. So still it's in the 4th house. And it's in the 9th house. Okay, so she's living in a place very far from home, where she's having to learn all of these things. It's a lifestyle, all of that. And she really wanted to go back home and leave the center during this eclipse. Like, that was a real breaking point where she had to commit to. So it's a 4-9 situation that when you bring it together.
Oh, sorry, it was 20 degrees. It was 20 degrees.
Okay. Yeah.
It's still a 4-9.
Right on. So she was still, Pluto's on her descent, on her IC. So yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, 20 degrees in the 9th house, pretty much on the IC. Still, it's right, home, learning. So that commitment to stay. And let me just check if there's any questions here. 20 Cancer, quincunx, South Node, 4th house. Yes, that's right. No, that's not a solar return chart. These are, right? These are just natal charts. Hold on one second. Yeah, these are, it's a young person, right? These are natal charts. 1999, isn't that interesting? Isn't that
that's
right? So this is why this is such a significant year for her. It's been years of addiction, and she's really going through the process now. So it's all happening. And how much, I'm sorry, is there time to do one more? Maybe I'll just skip the last one, because I know it's getting late.
We always go longer, but maybe we need to move on to Christina. Yeah.
So I
want
hope
to
that
answer. I'm sorry, there was a question about I think the person might be confused about the difference between a solar return chart and a solar.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that, Christina. Yeah, so let me explain. So when I write horoscopes, I write for Harper's Bazaar. The first thing I do is I set up 12 different charts, and I set them all up with a different rising sign. If you're an Aries and I'm writing for you, I put 0 degrees Aries on the ascendant. If you're a Sagittarius sun sign, I'm a Sagittarius, I put 0 degrees Sagittarius on the ascendant. and then roll each sign around it. So for example, this person, their natal chart, wait, I'm just going to show you all so you can see in the Solar Fire program. You just go edit chart. You all see that? Where it says Placidus, you just go to solar sign, press OK, and there we got a solar chart. So that's all you do if you want to try this at home. Solar return is a completely different thing. That's a birthday chart. The solar chart is really how Rick's been writing his horoscopes for the last 16 years or more, how any horoscope writer is using the method of solar chart, where we really put ourselves as if we're seeing the world through the light of that sign, as the sun in that sign. And it really puts you in their position when you look at the world through that lens. So somebody's asking, is your ascendant almost 0 degrees? If your ascendant is almost 0 degrees, it's the same chart. No, it's not the same chart, because the solar chart is your sun sign. So if you're a Sagittarius sun, then 0 degrees Sagittarius would become your solar chart. And then you just roll the rest of the signs around the wheel. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, sun on ascendant, then it's the same. Okay, cool. It looks like you all have it down then. You got it then. Great. Okay.
Yeah, great.
So I guess some things to note, if any of you are interested listening and would like to study further. I've run a year-round school for 12 years, and we are opening up the beginner series. And it's there's a wait list. If you get on my website, mypathastrology.com, we will open the doors to beginner school soon, which starts on October 4th. So this is like the nuts and bolts of astrology. If you'd like to learn, it's 12-week program. If any of you are interested in that, I can write the website in the chat box. But that starts on October 4th. It goes for 12 weeks, very much about the foundations of astrology. I think that's all I have going on right now. Of course, I have a medical astrology class too that begins. What am I talking about? That actually begins in a couple weeks, and that's a 4-week long class. So the medical is open already, and then the beginner starts on October 12th. So you can check all that out. It's been really fun to chat with you guys about solar and natal charts and making soup. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Christina. So
thank you so much, Rebecca. I was just going to say something. This is what we do want you to try at home. Okay, so everyone go off and try this at home. Thanks, Rebecca. If you can stop sharing your screen. And we'll go over to Christina. We've already been going an hour and 20.
I will say it's, this has absolutely changed my practice when I started combining it. So I would love to hear how it works for you all. You can always write me through the site as well. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we'll get you hooked up more. She's a new agent, and we'll get you to do something on the medical astrology next year for all of us as well. All right. So thanks, Rebecca. Wonderful to have you.
Great to be here.
Over to you, thanks. Agent 128.
Yay. Well, so yeah, that was a big change for me for this eclipse season. As I went back to my original agent number, I started at 128, and then I was playing around with 137 because I heard it was Carl Jung's favorite number. But then it didn't really fit, so Julia was.
Carl Jung did have an agent number. It was 437. I'll have to look it up. But during the war, he wrote something for the Germans, and he called himself Agent 437. So in good company.
But I have to be true to myself. So here I'm back at 128. And thank you so much, Rick and Rebecca. This is truly feeling kind of like a houseboat party, right? That's the Sabian symbol for this eclipse. And it's interesting because this is, as Rick was saying, every eclipse is either a new moon or a full moon. That's the first thing, for those of you that are just getting familiar with eclipses, to understand that, every month we have a new moon and we have a full moon. And twice a year we have eclipse season. And what makes it special, what makes an eclipse, is it's these lunations that are within a certain orb of the lunar nodes, what I like to call the nodes of destiny, or sometimes people call them the nodes of fate. And that's why they can feel like, destiny calling or fated events happening. Things come into alignment. And I loved what Rebecca had said before, is it's almost like a course correcting. Like if you get too far off course, you get corrected in some way. And that's why sometimes these events can feel really extreme or dramatic. Or sometimes maybe they go by and we don't notice them as much. And they can be a subtle change, seemingly subtle on the inside. I think a lot of it has to do with how far off the path we are. I had a really incredible experience several years ago witnessing one of my best friends having her 40th birthday on an eclipse, on a solar eclipse on her sun, right? So the eclipse was on her sun. And it was like, oh, what's this going to bring? And just long story short, she invited all of her friends to New York City. We were like a group of 10 girls from her college and from, high school. And I came all the way from Florida. And one by one, as just literally like 2 weeks before the birthday, her eclipse, people started dropping off. And I was the only person out of town that came to her birthday party, poor thing. And then in New York City, even her friends that lived there didn't show up for dinner. And even when we went to the restaurant, after an hour, they told us we had to leave because we were supposed to have a table for like 20 and there was like 2 of us. And she said she felt invisible. And that started getting me to think about what happens on these eclipses. And I started asking people, this was an eclipse in Virgo. Those of you that had birthdays around the eclipse, how did what did you feel like? Many people said they felt invisible. They were eclipsed by someone else. One woman said like her mother-in-law like stole the show when she was like eclipsed by the mother-in-law and she was like non-existent. Now, I also heard several other people that also said something similar, but opposite. They said, I spent my birthday with my family and close friends, and it was beautiful and it was touching, so this is just one example, but it's kind of like when we are eclipsed out because, the sun is temporarily eclipsed, then where are we in terms of our own identity? Is our outward identity in alignment with who we really are inside, with our character? So there's something around the identity, that's the sun, that's our character, our vitality, our identity out in the world. And if we sometimes might feel we don't get the validation or we don't get seen, that is a call to go inward and have a realignment. That's just one of these things to consider during this time. Sometimes we expect, the roof to fall in on us like during an eclipse. And if it doesn't, we're disappointed, something didn't happen. But there's always something coming into alignment. We often think of eclipses or times or radical departures from the norm, but in fact, when we think about, the alignment of the sun, the moon, the earth, the ecliptic, the nodes, there is something there metaphorically about alignment. And so that's a time for us to go inward and really look at how we are feeling aligned with our path of destiny. Because when we talk about the nodes, it's destiny. So we have our past karma that maybe we need to release some patterns or habits that are no longer working for us. And then there's our future evolution. How are we aligning with that? And in Leo, that's calling us to have some confidence, to have some courage, to be bold. And so we've had these eclipses in Leo Aquarius now for like a year and a half. And how have we stepped into that? How have we stepped into our special destiny during this time? And so it's not too late. The North Node is still in Leo until November. So that's really something we want to be considering. And let me just look at I'm going to share my screen and look at a couple of charts here. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, yes. Good. You can see my charts. Let me just actually go back here a minute. So we've been in this eclipse vortex, as we like to call it, which is the time between eclipses. And this has been a long one, 3 eclipses in a row. I don't know if any of you all astrologers know when the last time we've had 3 eclipses in a row, but it's been a while because I can't really remember when we've had one that's this eclipse season that's been this long, because we usually have eclipses in pairs twice a year. And this has been 3 of them. So that's why it was really important for us to mark this moment of wrapping up this eclipse vortex. So since July 12th, when we had that first solar eclipse in Cancer, that sort of opened up the vortex. And we like to think of this as a liminal space where the veil between the conscious and subconscious is lifted. So there's a lot of this subconscious material, if you want to call it shadow material, that's come through during this time. And that may be one of the reasons why we feel so uncomfortable with ourselves in the world, or our image, or our public image and our private self, because they seem to be commingled more. And there's parts of ourselves we start to see more clearly that maybe normally we're not so much looking at. They say often, because these are very destined, fated experiences, that the decisions we make can have far-reaching effects and profound consequences, a lot like what Rebecca was saying. We like that one client who is made the decision, like an internal commitment, to rise to some type of authority in her life, that's that 10th house, of being a sponsor for others. Even if she's far from actually being able to do it, that internal commitment, that internal knowing, this is my path, this is what I'm reaching toward. Those are the kinds of, far-reaching decisions that are possible now, because sometimes, during these eclipse periods, we can see the possibility, and maybe we're even more bold and courageous than we normally would be. And then when the eclipse portal closes, which I tend to look at as like 2 weeks after the last eclipse, that next lunation, then we're kind of plopped down back to earth. And our possibilities just become our regular possibilities. But there was something that changed within us, where maybe we made some decisions. Maybe we didn't tell anybody, but we know ourselves that there's something we're ready to arise to. And so what usually comes up during this time is that which is repressed comes up for confrontation and resolution. And so, we really get to look at that shadow part of ourselves. What has been really holding us back from life? A lot of times this comes through our dreams, right? Because the subconscious speaks to us in metaphor and in imagery, and that often comes a lot of times out through our dreams. And this is a time when it's really important to, I think the one thing we should be doing during eclipse periods is meditating, right? And, sometimes when we're doing that deep looking at ourselves and looking at our shadow, that can be exhausting. That can be tiring and stressful. We want to rest ourselves, and the best way to rest really is meditation. And in meditation, we can receive. Right? We're not constantly having to think and to figure things out and to have shame and release shame or whatever. We can actually receive and rest our mind and have a deeper sense of knowing of where we are in our path and what's appropriate for us. And so many of the Tibetan Buddhists have said that these eclipse periods, they honor eclipse periods as very sacred times of prayer and meditation. I was just reading that the ancient Chinese, the emperors would be vegetarian during that time, no eating meat. And even the emperor would do like cleaning cleaning tasks and stuff like that, would do humble service. And that's something for us to consider too. Supposedly, the Tibetans believe that the effects of positive and negative actions are multiplied during eclipses. So on lunar eclipses, they're multiplied 1,000 times, and solar eclipses 100,000 times. I'm not really sure where they got those numbers, but it does seem to be that what we do during these eclipse periods has an imprint. You know, at the very least, it has an imprint to the next the next eclipse period, if not the rest of our lives. But oftentimes we see eclipses ripen with the similar storyline to that next eclipse, the pair eclipse of the next eclipse season. And as Julia mentioned, I mean, their cycles even longer, like the 19-year cycles, a Metonic, an 18-year, what was it, Saros series or whatever it is, you know, longer periods of storylines in our lives. But just even if we want to look at the shorter term, you know, considering from eclipse season to eclipse season, 6 months, you know, what's possible in 6 months that can make the difference in the commitments you make to yourself. And so just sort of a imagery of a solar eclipse. Obviously, as we said, this isn't a total solar eclipse like we'd had before, the Great American Eclipse here last year in America. But, you know, it is the sun's rays being blocked by the moon. And so that which the sun represents is in shadow somewhat for us during this time. And because the sun represents things like vitality and confidence and, you know, again, our image of ourselves out in the world versus the image of who we're being, that is in shadow. So that's where we can get that sense of confusion and maybe even a lack of confidence for a time. They say that eclipses, solar eclipses, are like a power outage followed by a power surge. So the power outage comes around this eclipse time, right? Where we may be feeling a turn inward. Any new moon, we tend to, you know, be focused inward a little bit more than usual. But for an eclipse, that tends to be a little more extreme. And then maybe a week later, when we get that fullness of, you know, the return of the sun, metaphorically, if not literally, then we can really see the illumination of what that eclipse period was meaning for us. So the solar eclipse, again, what the sun represents, things like ego, creativity, our identity, our priorities, and our potential, and our visibility in the world. And so solar eclipses obscure the light of the sun and cast shadow upon the earth. And it's said that the present is blotted out by the past, right? So the present, represented by the sun, is blotted out by the past, which is what the moon represents, right? So we start to think about our past attachments, you know, how we've been conditioned. Why am I the way I am? What formed my identity? Maybe it had to do with experiences from childhood, which is what, you know, we can think about with the moon, how we've been conditioned by our parents and society, you know? So this is why it's a really important time for self-reflection. So this new moon solar eclipse, which is exact here in America, is going to be Saturday morning, tomorrow morning. We look at, and tell me if this is right, I'm pretty sure, I hope I got my Saros series correct, Julia. I got it to be the SS2 New North theme. Now this is from Bernadette Brady's book, The Eagle and the Lark. And it was about, is that correct? Because I think she has different numbers.
Probably, I didn't check the book either, but yeah, I'm just calling it 155.
Okay.
But it is, there is a difference, yeah, from the north, and also there are Saros 155, but it's a lunar, right? So you need to sort of differentiate lunar, solar, and north and south. Yeah.
For some reason in her book, as far as I could see, it only had the solar eclipses. So I'm gonna have to check.
Okay. I can't remember now.
Okay, great. So what I had was the theme for this family of eclipses, because the point of the Saros series is that they have themes for these, you know, the eclipses that are in this family. And it's about a sudden collapse of existing structures, and rebuilding has far-reaching effects. And I just summarized that But it seemed to really emphasize that, yes, there's likely sudden collapses of things, of whatever existing structures, maybe where the eclipse falls in your chart, but it's so important to have faith in the rebuilding effort. And it kind of makes me think of, too, is with this Mars retrograde, I mean, there have been so many sudden breakages of, and, you know, Mars square Uranus, sudden changes in dynamics of relationships, of friendships, people here one day, gone the next, or saying, I always resented you because of blah, 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 or whatever. I've been saying that everywhere. And I'm just wondering how long until after this eclipse do these rebuilding efforts start taking place? I think people need to start to learn how to apologize. It's the one thing. And have the courage to apologize. But whatever it is, whatever these collapses are, you know, the rebuilding effort is what is important now, what is important for the future, according to the Bernadette Brady interpretation. And so we look at the Sabian symbol, which is about a houseboat party. That's the symbol, you know, the Sabian image. And what does that evoke for us? Dana Rudyard had translated it as being suddenly releasing from the society's expectations of how to act and how to be, and you know, being able to celebrate that temporarily. Because when we think about a houseboat, is, you know, it's on the water, but it's still, you know, tied to the shore a little bit. So you're going to be partying a little bit, but not go too far off the deep end, hopefully. The tarot for this, the second decan of Leo, is the Six of Wands. And that has something to do with actually victory, with triumph, confidence, and recognition. And so that's a very positive symbol there. And I will say that this eclipse is also tightly conjunct Pallas Athena. And so Pallas Athena, I don't remember if she's retrograde. I think she might be too. Everyone's retrograde now, right? It's the thing to do. But Pallas Athena is the warrior goddess of victory. She's about feminine creative intelligence, which is blending the head and the heart for the purpose of victory. She's a warrior for, you know, being in Leo, she'll be over the top, you know, wanting to win, wanting victory. And there is a little warning there with Pallas Athena that we want to be careful that, you know, if we want to win at all costs, we could lose win the battle, but lose the war. And that's something we want to be careful about, because if we're so focused on victory in the moment, Pallas Athena reminds us that we need to connect with our heart, we need to connect with our mind, and blend the two with intelligent intuition and foresight, right? So we don't want to be focused on just the battle, we want to be focused on the big picture. And as Julia had said, that the August 11th, 1999 solar eclipse was at 18 Leo. And so that is the Metonic cycle. And that you'll want to look at, you know, just consider what was happening in 1999. That was a long time ago. I'm sure some people here weren't born yet, but Julia, do you know what was happening in your life?
We were getting ready for the end of the world, weren't we?
Oh yeah, because it was 2000. Yeah, the world was going to end in 2000. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I was in London at the time, and they had built some big 2000 tower or whatever. People there were celebrating. I think in America is where they were really freaking out.
I was standing on a grassy knoll on in Plymouth, England, at the AA conference, and Rob Hand was doing an incantation in Latin to Mercury, trying to clear the fucking clouds from the sky.
So did they clear? Saved us all.
No, it didn't work, but it was an awesome moment anyhow.
Oh wow, it's fabulous.
That was in New York. It was the height of the .com. I remember here the craze was so intense in '99. All of the new companies, and it was just it was this sort of like false high. It was a massive bubble was building here in that time. We have fever.
I was writing it.
Oh yeah,
You're writing.
Riding, not right.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I started formal studies of astrology in August 1999, so it's been a whole cycle for me. What's next?
Yes, what's next?
Oh, fascinating. Next level.
Yeah,
Oh, wait,
that's right.
I just realized I was married on August 9th, 1999. I got married then.
Oh, wow.
I'm not married anymore.
You're not married
obviously,
anymore?
So.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So
Oh, man.
Time to turn up that radio station.
Some new romance, perhaps. Oh, my gosh. You know what? I'm actually going on a boat on Monday for 10 days. So houseboat party coming up with 6 friends. So I'm desperately trying to get everything finished so I can get away, you know. So it's kind of a bit, you know, no rest for me or meditation. I'm just going to, you know, finish off. So talking about that, we should finish off. Christina, have you finished up? Yeah, sorry, Dal.
I got one more. Okay, so this is our solar eclipse now, like we talked about this chart a few times. And now it's worthwhile to just take a quick look at the lunar eclipse chart in January 2019, right? So that's the full moon of the next full moon in Leo. And look at what's happening here. This is I cast it for Washington, D.C., just because I usually do, you know, in America. Isn't that interesting? We've got it. It'll be right conjunct within a degree of the midheaven of Washington, D.C. It'll be a North Node eclipse. By that time, the North Node will be in Cancer. And then we've got this nice, juicy Venus-Jupiter conjunction within a degree in Sagittarius. I mean, you can't ignore that. I want to hear what's happening with Rebecca by that time. And it's trine Mars in Aries. I don't know. Lots of nice fire here. And we can look at it more. And you know, so it's worthwhile to look at, you know, your Leo house. Right now, this eclipse is starting a new seeding moment at 18 degrees Leo. The full moon in January will be at 0 degrees Leo. You know, what would you want to intend now to be blossoming at that time? You know, maybe taking advantage of some Jupiter, Venus, and trine Mars, and you know, we're getting closer.
It's a Mars return for me.
Oh yeah, and Aries, Mr. Aries. Oh, and the other thing is, isn't it interesting? Mercury is also conjunct this eclipse. It'll be on the South Node though, right? And it'll be direct in Capricorn. So we have Mercury retrograde now. Maybe the news that comes out now, you know, there's going to be more Mercury stuff. Mercury is luckily going to be direct by that time, so maybe it won't be causing us so much trouble. But it's worth kind of contemplating.
Thanks, Christina. Awesome. Well, there's a lot to look ahead. We'll be doing much more on that as it gets closer, I suppose. So here, let me put us all back on. All of us back on. Thank you, agents.
Can I just real quick that
yes.
I'll put my website in the chat box. That oh my God, I did a special for this eclipse for audio readings where I do a mini Pallas Athena reading as well as a mini reading on this eclipse and the January eclipse for you, and I do it in a PDF and a 30-minute audio. And tomorrow's the last day you can take advantage of it. So I'll put my website in the chat box if you're interested. It's radiantastrology.com. And that's all I got right now. Thank you so much, Julia, for hosting our little houseboat party.
No problem. Yeah, a little houseboat party. Well, hey, we'll have to do one day. Hey, get us all on a boat. Well, you know, our Mercury is on that 11 degrees Leo is this Cosmic Intelligence Agency's Mercury, and it is what we talked about before, the house on the lawn party. It's not the houseboat party, it's the lawn party.
We're going to have to play croquet then, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we will gather. I'm hoping that we can gather many of us in Australia in 2021. So just something that we're working on, and, you know, of course, we'll let you all know and try and get as many here as we can. biggest thing is about finding the big lawn for us all. So we don't want to be in a Marriott. We need to be under the stars and, you know, at a fire and all that type of thing, which we love to do. So keep an eye on what's going on for all of us. Gosh, yeah, there's so much more that we could all talk about, but we do have to move on with our lives and our nights and our movements and all that type of thing. So thanks everyone for being online. I will put also all your contacts in the Facebook chat. So for anyone that hasn't been on the webinar here, that has seen the chats and the links and stuff, also for yourselves. And any sort of closing thoughts, Rick? Thanks for being here. We miss you.
Happy trails to all of us.
Yeah, well said. Yes, for sure. And Rebecca, I'm sorry for calling you Rebecca something else. Rebecca Gordon, good luck with all your things. It sounds amazing what's going on for you as well. An eclipse on your ascendant. Yeah.
It's been so great to be here with you all and to hear all these different lenses on the sky. It's been truly a lovely evening. So wish you all a wonderful.
I enjoyed each of you guys' stuff. It was fun getting the different slices, you know. It was nice.
Fantastic. That's the way it comes together. It's almost like we're the agents of chaos. So the way it comes together is the way it comes together, and it always works somehow. So fabulous. Thanks, Christina, as well for you guys. Happy eclipse, everyone, and keep in touch, and we'll let you know about next time. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for joining
us. Signing off, Agent 12.
Join the CIA. Join us.
Yeah, exactly. You know where it's happening. The good stuff's happening right here. Ciao, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.